2023 is rapidly drawing to a close, and the Republican-led House of Representatives is officially in recess until the start of the new year, which means we probably won't get many more updates on the one thing that House Republicans tried to do this year with their political capital, which was basically impeach President Biden. But we do have a few more things to wrap up on that score, and then hopefully we won't have to talk about it until 2024. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks. So again, hopefully this is the last time we'll have to talk about the baseless impeachment of President Biden, at least for another couple of weeks, because you know that House Republicans are not going to let this go next year. And by the way, I'll remind you, the stats are in, and we did a video about it. But this iteration of Congress, thanks to the Republican-led House of Representatives, is the least productive in decades, and the second least productive in U.S. history, second only to Congress under the Great Depression during the Hoover administration. Okay, so that's pretty bad. Now, with that in mind, again, I want to remind you, this is the one thing that House Republicans have tried to do all year, which was basically impeach the president. But even Fox News hosts continue to say that they have failed spectacularly to meet their burden.
Tax evasion.
So, Julian,
it seems impossible for me, Arthel, for Democrats to say there's nothing here to see.
We'll see, but here you are. You're repeating all the allegations, still with hardly any evidence directly connecting those dots to President Biden himself. So that's, as you know how that saying goes. You repeat it many enough times, then people start to believe it. But let me ask you.
So that's Arthel Neville, and this is a recent clip. Again, it's not just Steve and Peter Doocy. It's not just occasionally Brian Kilmeade and Maria Bartiromo, who are frustrated that Republicans have failed to deliver the goods time and time again. It's just, I mean, that is how uncontroversial this impeachment is with respect to the facts. This is probably the weakest impeachment effort by far in the history of presidential impeachments. But something Arthel said there at the end, which is if you repeat allegations enough, and I think what she really meant is lie, if you repeat a lie enough, then people will believe it. And folks, as I've told you, that is absolutely true, especially, unfortunately, with this electorate. So this is also from a recent article that we'll be going back to because it's got some good parts to it. It's from NBC. A recent NPR PBS Marist poll found that Americans are now evenly split on the Biden impeachment probe, with 49% supporting it and 48% opposing it. In the same poll in October, 47% supported the probe, while 52% opposed it. And nearly 7 in 10 voters believe that Biden has acted either illegally or unethically in his son's business dealings, according to the Associated Press. Now, that doesn't mean that if Republicans proceed with an impeachment, remember, we're just at the inquiry phase, that it will be successful or supported. And certainly it's dead on arrival if it gets to the Senate, if they proceed with this. And certainly there's enormous political risk to Republicans here, and we'll get to that in a moment. But folks, this idea, again, I can't stress this enough. It's not enough to have the facts on your side. You have to persuasively and relentlessly convey the facts with all kinds of rhetoric and combination of words and combination of rhetoricians at different times of the week and different times at night. You got to hit this thing from different angles. Republicans are really good at persuading people with lies and BS. It's part of the reason they enjoy such a colossal advantage with respect to polling on the economy, even though the facts don't support it, right? So Democrats and President Biden, they have got to step up their game and not just assume that the American people will be like, okay, well, where are the facts? That's not enough. So I just want to stress that. But there is some other good news. So this is from a Republican senator named Mark Wayne Mullen. Okay, this is the guy who wanted to square off with a union boss and had to be that fight had to be broken up by Bernie Sanders a couple of months ago. So I want to play this clip where he points out, and this guy's deranged, by the way. This is not a reasonable, moderate Republican. This is not Mitt Romney. He's actually pointing out that Republicans have a hell of a burden to meet.
If they send us a case, make sure it's convictable. And the bar is real high. There's no question about it. It's got to be a misdemeanor, high crime, or treason. And the other bar, it has to be committed while he was in office, the current office he holds. So what he did as a vice president, what he did in between the two may not be impeachable.
That's an incredibly important distinction. So if they want to impeach President Biden, they can't hit it. Even if they found something dirty he did as vice president, let's say they have the goods on him as vice president, legally speaking, they can't bring an impeachment case against him because it had nothing to do with actions he took while he was in this specific office. But they haven't even done that. You know, they talk about this check or that check, you know, these loan repayments from Joe to Jim, which is Joe Biden's brother, and then back again, and same thing with Hunter. They were made, these loans, for which there are bank transactions to prove that they were legitimate loans. They were conducted while Joe Biden was a private citizen. You can't impeach somebody for that. So it's just not very good for Republicans so far. They have a very high threshold to meet. You have an alleged moderate, David Joyce, who recently told NBC News in this article, even though he voted, by the way, for the impeachment inquiry, which is just cognitive dissonance in its fullest form. He says, I haven't seen any yet to date evidence that shows me that the president did anything wrong, said Representative Dave Joyce of Ohio, a former longtime county prosecutor and the leader of the centrist Republican governance group, in an interview. We've gone through the process of indicting President Biden and the members of the Biden family, but we've not seen any evidence that gives weight to the indictment. That's huge. And yet he voted for the damn thing anyway, which goes to show you how weak and frail and hypocritical and spineless these Republicans are. Another one, Don Bacon. I was going to play the clip, but we're already like 6 minutes in, so I don't want to drag this out. So he says, if this is perceived as being a revenge impeachment or a politicized impeachment, it will hurt Republicans. Bacon said during an appearance on Meet the Press Now, if we don't handle this right, and if it looks like we're using it as a political weapon, it will come back to bite us all. And that is very much true. There is enormous potential in that respect. And yet he also voted for the impeachment inquiry as well. So again, total lack of spine. So when Republicans say, you know, I'm just not there yet, I don't think I'd vote for an impeachment. I believe them when they say that the evidence isn't there yet, but I don't believe them that this idea that, oh, I won't vote for an impeachment if the evidence isn't there. Well, you've already taken actions which contradict the idea that you believe this is evidence-based, right? Because you probably shouldn't have voted for the impeachment inquiry if after a year of investigations, you have found insufficient evidence to really even you can't even point to something in particular to say this smells weird. So that said, there's some additional good news with respect to the impeachment inquiry in terms of President Biden. So let's play this clip.
Well, Dana, the Biden campaign is trying to use this opportunity, turning it into a political advantage for them. I'm told that they started fundraising off of this impeachment inquiry vote last night. And already that email that was sent in Vice President Kamala Harris's name, it is the best performing email sent by the campaign just this month. The vice president wrote in that email, quote, House Republicans just launched a ridiculous impeachment inquiry into President Biden that lacks real evidence and that they themselves admit is all about politics.
So that's extraordinary, especially when you consider the fact that President Biden's reelection campaign and the Democratic Party's fundraising efforts have been extraordinary, folks. I mean, they are radically out fundraising and outperforming both Donald Trump and the Republican Party, cleaning their clock. It's brutal. It's one-sided. So for this particular pitch to be that effective, there's some serious fundraising potential here, which is going to be desperately needed as we head into 2024. But also swing voters in swing states, they're not seeing this, folks. They're not happy with it so far.
Support an impeachment inquiry to look into what's going on financially among the Bidens? None of you.
Where are the facts and where are the evidence? I really largely think that a lot of the talk about impeachment inquiries and corruptness of the Bidens is political posturing.
100%, right? And these are swing voters. These aren't like dyed-in-the-wool Democrats or hippie liberals. These are people, rather, that Republicans desperately need if they're going to win any of the elections in 2024. And there's additional evidence to support that as well.
Trail a lot. You just got back this morning from New Hampshire. Does that comport with what you hear on the trail, particularly from voters who are not sure how to go?
It does. I mean, just sort of one more example of why people don't like Washington. So in
Trail a lot. You just
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean for that to repeat. But yeah, so it's the same thing. I was just in New Hampshire, and voters say Republicans' impeachment inquiry is just one more example of why people don't like Washington. Okay, so they're hearing this constantly. And that's not to say that things will change. But right now, swing voters don't really see the appeal of it, the importance of it. They see that Republicans are failing to address meaningful, infinitely more important issues than pursuing a political vendetta against the president. Now, again, hopefully that's the last time we're going to have to talk about it for at least another, week. Right. But you never know. James Comer might have to go on TV and he might say, well, them there Democrats, I found us another check. Joe Biden once, when Hunter Biden was a baby, and he lost a tooth, he said that there's a tooth fairy, and we believe that the tooth fairy is, in fact, a Chinese communist operative. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they go with this because it's so ridiculous. But that's where we are with this, folks. Hopefully, again, this is the last time we have to talk about impeachment until next year. Let me know what you think in the comments.